Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I want to thank all that have joined us today for our third, maybe it's our fourth webinar on Ocumetics. By way of disclaimers and disclosures, here are disclaimers. I'd like to say that many of the comments that you will hear tonight are my personal comments, and that very first personal comment I'll give you is that I believe our stock is understated and undervalued given the technology that we're working with and where we are in the process to bring it to commercialization. And I'll bring those points out as we go through the presentation. So by way of an agenda, I'd like to welcome everyone for being here. I'll do just a very brief introduction of myself for those that I have not had the pleasure of speaking with. And then we'll talk through the fine steps of the 12-step journey to first in human. And I'll specifically share some comments about the manufacturing of the first Ocumetics accommodative lens technology that we're pretty excited about. And then towards the end, I'll leave enough time for us to really get into a robust question and answer session. I won't go through these points, but I am a very experienced individual when it comes to the ophthalmic market. I spent over 40 years in the medical area, 27 being with the largest ophthalmic company. Ophthalmic is just eye care company in the world, which is Alcon Vision. And I manage one of their largest divisions with about $750 million worth of top line business, healthy growth, and about a 65% gross margin on that business. I have a lot of awards and I have a lot of approvals through the FDA, 15 to be exact. And in my space, if you get one, you're doing real well. I've had the pleasure over 27, almost 28 years of getting 15, and I'm working on my 16th with Ocumetics. So why are we conducting the webinar? Well, we do it for really three reasons. One, we want to introduce, update, and ask you to partner. We want to introduce ourselves to organizations that are new to our community. We want to update those that have been following Ocumetics for years on our journey towards the FDA, and we want to ask you to partner with us at the end of this presentation as we complete the first in human phase of the FDA journey. So let's talk a little bit about the problem. The problem with eyesight is that over time it begins to deteriorate as you get older. This is an age-related issue. And there are two conditions that actually occur as we get older. One is we lose the ability to what we refer to in the clinical world, accommodate. And all that is a fancy term for you. It's harder for you to see both in distance and near without your brain needing some assistance. And what that assistance is either glasses or contact lenses to allow you to read up close. As you get old, and that usually starts at 45, by the way, as you get older, you not only lose the ability to accommodate, but then that lens that's in your eye starts to cloud up. And it could either get a white, milky type cloud, or it could be a brown brunescent. It just depends on your body type. But it becomes very inflexible, so it gets really hard. And if you don't correct it, it actually leads to blindness. So cataract surgery does correct blindness, and it's one of the most successful surgery around the world. So here's an example of what it looks like. So here's a gentleman that's just reading his phone, but you notice how close that phone is to his face. He has clearly lost the ability to accommodate because he's trying to bring the image in closer. He may even push it out further to find that sweet spot where he can actually see and resolve the image. If you have a cataract on top of that, what happens is you begin to not be able to resolve very simple type images that are placed in front of your face. So the yellow flower that's closest to the gentleman, that's normal vision. You can see a lot of detail, a lot of depth in that picture. Well, as the lens starts to get cloudy, you start to not be able to resolve that lens. And eventually, instead of just becoming a fuzzy image, it will actually go dark. And that's where blindness comes from cataract. So deterioration of eyesight as we age is something that we all will go through. It's not like you get immune from it, but there are things that we can do to mitigate that. So let's just talk about accommodation real quickly. We refer to being able to see in the distance as the eye is in a non-accommodative state. What that looks like is, here's an example of driving down a road. You can actually see pretty well all the images that are on the horizon. You can see the road, you can see the sky, and you can even make out all kinds of details with the clouds. So when your body is, when you're younger, you can almost see perfect. Well, what happens when you want to see up close? Well, I'm going to go back one slide. I'm going to ask everyone if they could see my pointer here. We have this thing inside our eye called the lens, the natural crystalline lens. Some of you are aware of LASIK. LASIK works on this part of the eye, which is called the cornea, and I don't have a full cornea, but that's what this is here. That's where LASIK works. When you get older, you have issues with this thing in the middle of your eye that actually looks like a solid contact lens. When it's thin and flat, it allows you to see in the distance. When it's fat and relaxed, that actually allows you to see up close. Your body and your eye and your brain automatically do that. You don't have to really think about that because the brain is sensitive enough to know exactly how to resolve those images. And we do that without even thinking about it. Well, when you get older, you actually have to have aid to help in that process. So what was the initial solution that came out? Well, the initial solution was to design a lens, and I have it highlighted in the red circle, that would kind of vault forward and then kind of relax. Well, the problem with it is it didn't work. The eye doesn't work the way the lens was designed. And so the first accommodative lenses did not work because they operated on a principle that doesn't even exist in the eye today. And so we never really designed an accommodative lens that actually worked. Well, Ocumetics and other companies came along and through our design science came up with a new way of looking at creating an IOL to do this. Our design is a three-piece design. It has an interior optical element, a posterior optical element, and in between there, it has this layer of air that allow us to separate these two optical elements and make the lens work. Well, how does that make sense in the context of how the eye works? Well, I just showed you an image where right here, we had the natural crystalline lens. In this particular case, we actually put in this animation the Ocumetics lens. So when that lens is thinning out, which is shown here, it allows you to see in the distance. And when that lens is thickening up, and you can see here, there's a lot of air and distance in between there, it allows us to see up close. This is called biokinetics, and this is actually how the eye works, which is why our technology is so unique to the marketplace. And in between the two lenses, there's air. And so we're able to allow light to pass through the air without any problems whatsoever. Patients see really well. Now, I want you to see this animation. I'm going to push it, the button here, but you'll see how the lens actually works. So it goes up and down. and it's going up and down because of the muscles in the eye. And I won't get into the physiology of the eye. It's a really interesting conversation, but it goes up and down the way it's supposed to work in the eye and the way it was designed. If we look at the science behind our solution, it's a one-piece lens that is air-filled. It's been designed to give us up to 3.25 diopters of accommodation. Accommodation, here again, is that ability to see both in the distance and near. And the best way to look at the 3.25 diopters is when you go to a big box store or a pharmacy and you get to the point where you need to have readers, you get to start with a number, and that number is 0.5, 1 diopter, 1.25, 1.5, all the way up to about 4. And that's exactly the same thing that we're doing here with the Ocumetics lens. And here again, I'm not going to have a clinical discussion with you. I'm just going to try to simplify what it is that we're trying to do. So we're giving the patient up to 3.25 diopter worth of accommodation, and we want the eye to disaccommodate very fast. This is a safety issue, and the reason it's a safety issue is if you're driving your car and you're looking in the distance and you have to look down at your dash or your phone or to read a document and you look back up, you want that transition to be very, very, very fast. If not, you're going to be, in this case, driving with fuzzy vision for quite some time because we look up and down quite often or even around us, and we have multiple visual points that we have to take into consideration. So the lens accommodates and disaccommodates very quickly. It's one of those technologies that does not have silicone oil in it. And the reason I'm making such a big deal of silicone oil is we've learned a lot about silicone oil in the plastics surgical area where silicone oil was actually used for breast implants, and the seal's broken, the silicone oil started leaking in the body, and women got sick. So the body does not like silicone oil, but in this particular case, there are quite a few companies that are using silicone oil because they're sliding their lenses across each other, and we're not doing that at all. All right, I won't show the Ocumetics implantation video because I don't really know the audience that I have here, but this is a video that was used with our biocompatibility study, which is the very first thing that you have to showcase when you go into the FDA funnel. So you have to show safety data with your technology. So it's either the material or the device. In our case, it was the device, and it's a bunny study. So on the left-hand side, that's a bunny eye it's a purpose-bred bunny. It's not your pet store type bunny. They are raised specifically for surgical techniques and to learn a few things about materials. The right-hand side shows how that lens actually sits in the eye. And when your pupil comes down, you don't even see the implant in your eye. Okay, so let's dive into the road to first in human. If any of you joined us the last time, I spoke very specifically about there are a lot of steps that we have to take into consideration to even get to the point where we do first in human. You hear that term, first in human, and you think, okay, I'm going to put a lens in a patient, but we actually have to do a lot of activities and things just to put the lens in the patient. So between now and when we actually get everything done, there are 3 major activity levels that we are involved in. One is what we call finalization of R&D designs. The second one is regulatory application and approval. And the last is surgical patient experience. So the regulatory application and R&D finalization, those are activities that will be finalized this quarter. And then the surgical activity begins fourth quarter of this year as well. So let me show you what that looks like. So it's color coded so that it will help you to understand where we are in this big continuum. So for the third quarter, the activities were manufacturing of the first lens. We just sent out a press release showcasing that. We're really excited about being able to go from desktop laboratory prototypes that were made to true quality manufacturing of a lens. And I'll show you some designs with that here in a second. We're in the process of finalizing what the regulatory application to the DR looks like. The last piece of that is we have to tell the Minister of Health for the DR what our protocol is going to be for surgery and how we're going to handle and manage those patients. So we're working on that as we speak. We completed our lens injector system, so we had to create a new injector system for this lens, which is great because we got that done working with a partner in Switzerland. And I'll show you a video about what that injector looks like. Once we receive the regulatory approval from the DR, then all the other clinical things begin. So we do a site survey, we complete that inspection because we have to make sure that the site is ready to receive the patients and the materials and products that will be used to do the surgery. From that, we have a whole host of activities that are all centered around managing the patients, training the surgeons, completing the patient recruitment, and doing the surgery. Now, you'll notice, and I'll go back, that it's color-coded. Everything in green and yellow is either in process or completed. All the reds are things that we are working on but not yet ready to implement. And these things are serialized, so you can't put the cart before the horse. You actually have to do every one of these steps. And so this is our 12 steps towards the first in human for the Ocumetics lens. Now, let's talk about lens manufacturing. We are super excited because we went out and we spent a ton of money on a device, which is shown here on my screen, called the IOL Lens Analyzer. What this device does is it measures every lens that we make. When it spits out a report, it shows us not only something that is color-coded with peaks and valleys, but it tells us the quality of the lens. And I won't go into what sphere and MTF mean, but it shows us here's what we were trying to make versus here's what we made, and here's the quality of what we made. Keep in mind, it's got to be crystal clear. You have to be able to translate light through this device and into the retina. So this device shows us how to do it. The way we make it is we have metal molds similar to this that allow us to make an optically quality lens. And we are just so super excited to be able to make the optical quality lens. Up to this point in time, we've been doing 3D printing on our lenses to prove our technology out. And we are now at the point where we are doing optically quality manufacturing. And that is just super exciting for Ocumetics. The other thing is we created what's called a loading chamber. And what that is it's a place where you put the lens so that you can inject the lens into the eye and do what's referred to as minimal invasive surgery or small gauge surgery. So the end of this tip right here is 3 millimeters. And so it goes through a 3.2 millimeter incision very nicely. And we inject the lens into the eye. And I am going to run that video for a second. And this is all still in the lab where we're using the new loading chamber. So the lab manager is making sure that we don't crimp off the optic. We're using the plunger to push it into the injector. And once it's in the injector, it's ready to be deployed into the eye. This whole assembly was brand new for the Ocumetics lens, and we spent a lot of R&D dollars to get one that was very smooth, and it delivered the lens in the eye the way we needed it to be delivered in the eye. So this is what will be used in the first in-human study. All right. So why should investors like yourself get involved with Ocumetics? Well, first of all, the industry, the market is so large. Just in the U.S., 138 million people in the U.S. are 45 years or older. So it's a very large market. And if you extrapolate that around the world, you can imagine the size of that number. It is projected that this market is going to be a $4.6 billion USD type market, and it's growing at 5.4% a year. And so the growth rate is really good. The size just of the US market is incredible. And I can't remember a technology where every candidate or every person that is of age is a candidate for the Ocumetics technology. I mentioned in my intro that I've got 15 FDA approvals. In my time in this market, I have not found a technology as interesting and exciting as the accommodative IOL technology that Ocumetics has put together. Our stock is way undervalued given the fact that this technology has the capability of servicing so many people. And so it's pretty exciting. By way of just trying to put together a potential development market revenue model, if you just look here, there are a lot of different ways that we can actually slice and dice and analyze the market. I just chose to use the one that basically shows the different types of lenses that are deployed in the marketplace. If we just look at cataract-only potential patients, that category is basically a $4.45 billion category growing at 5.4% per year. The IOL segment that we will participate in is called the premium IOL sector, and that's about a little north of a $1 billion market. Ocumetics plans to occupy about a 40% share, and that's a $500 million potential revenue for one product. We actually have several different models in the R&D coffers, but we want to get this one completed because every one beyond this particular lens will have some of the same type features, but just expanded and evergreen to be even better. If we add two market segments together, which is the presby market along with the cataract, you can see it's almost $750 million revenue potential. And here again, I'll say it again, it's one product. So this is a blockbuster type opportunity for us. From a fundraising perspective, our history and activity and behavior has been really good. Our investor relations director has done a very good job of raising the necessary funds to get us to this point. So if you just do the math, we are just shy of $10 million with our raise, which was concept, and then to get us into the early stages for first in human. And now we'll be looking beyond that. And those are just some indications of budgets that we will be looking at to potentially talk with investors on. So let's talk about competition. I like the fact that this market has, or this area, a lot of competition. So there are 14 companies that occupy the accommodative IOL space. There are 6 companies, and Ocumetics is one, that have come out of the gates and that are doing relatively well. And I kind of equate this to a horse race. As soon as you hear the bell and the gates open, everyone goes to the rail. Nobody has gone around turn one. Everyone is just bunched up in the rail, and so it is with us. The interesting thing is I've got 5 companies that are listed on this slide. Ocumetics is not listed on this first part of the slide because these companies are all using silicone oil technology. And I mentioned to you that I'm not saying that their technology is bad. I'm just saying that silicone oil is not native and good for the body. But they're all using those silicone oil technology in their lenses. Ocumetics is the only non-silicone oil technology. So now we have an exclusive category that we can own and occupy in addition to innovation and some other things that I want to own. So we're well positioned to be the market dominant leader with the accommodative IOL technology. And I'm really excited and proud of the team for that. The other area that we're very strong in is we have over 49 global patents, and I've got circles around certain regions where we will look at doing early potential commercialization in those regions once we get into the multi-center clinical trial. So we want to be in a position where we are selling this technology around the world, even though we are going through our pathway to FDA approval and commercialization. So what are we asking? Well, we're asking you to partner with us from an investment perspective. One is join us in our next investment round. We don't know exactly when that's going to be because we just finished up the $4 million round for first in human, but we want you to consider joining us in the next round of investment, which would probably be a Series A extended or Series A plus round. If you want to buy on the open market, Ocumetics does trade on the open market. So become a retail investor and buy some of the stock on the open market. And if you already own those shares on the open market, hold those shares because the value of the shares will start going up. That's my prediction because of where we are with first in human, finishing things up and getting the lens closer to commercialization. I tell the team all the time that very few medical companies get to this point. They usually die on the vine because they either run out of money or they find that the technology really doesn't work. This technology works. And that's why we are just super excited about where we are, and we're willing to share with everyone what we're doing and what we're about. Okay, so I am going to stop there. I'm going to ask my colleague Dayton Marks to jump in here, and we'll open it up to a question and answer. So Dayton, are you available?
Yes, sir. Can everybody hear me? Can you hear me?
Well, their mics are probably muted, but I can hear you just fine.
Okay, excellent, excellent. All right, we do have a few questions. I did type it in the webinar chat, but I think that that wasn't made available to the attendees, so I do apologize. In particular, I stipulated that we would wait till the end to answer questions, but we do have a few. If there's any further questions, you can type those in. We'll try to get to those. And I was just going to add, if you don't mind there, Dean, for everybody that is attending, even if you're not necessarily somebody who's going to be investing into the stock, or maybe you're already a shareholder, or perhaps you're somebody that's just waiting for the technology to become available, you can still help Ocumetics out very simply by talking to friends and family, talking to business associates, and telling people about the company. That helps. You can also like and share our content on social media. assisting us in getting more exposure. All these things help so that we can move forward with, raising capital. R&D is also part of that process as well. But just the notoriety, the general public being made aware of our presence and what we're doing, that in and of itself is helpful to the company. So just wanted to add that to it. Okay, I'm just going to open up the questions and we'll jump into this. So one of the questions here was to do with certain eye related issues. I think with presbyopia in particular, we have a solution for that for the most part. But the first question here was, I think it was more to do with having an atypical eye or having certain diseases or other problems, and how that might impact the ability to get the lens.
Okay, I'm not 100% sure if I understand the question directly, but I'll take a stab at if you have normal eye conditions like astigmatism, myopia, hyperopia. You can also have presbyopia with those conditions, and this lens will take care and handle that just fine. If you have a disease that is occurring like glaucoma or keratoconus or any kind of corneal ectatic type disease, then you're going to have to really talk it through with your doctor to make sure that he or she feels comfortable putting a high performance lens in your eye. But if
Perfect.
it's something that's normal, we can handle that.
Yeah, there was a follow-up question here, and this is actually, I think this is a great question. Is it not a problem for the study participants if two different lens types are used?
Well, for the for the study, we will use two different lens types. So for the targeted eye, we will use the Ocumetics accommodative lens. And for the non-targeted eye, we will use a controlled lens. And that controlled lens will be something from another company. And
Yeah,
I do know
we won't say which company.
what that is, but I won't say what it is. What was that again?
Yeah, I was just going to say we aren't going to say which company, but yeah.
No, absolutely not. We can't
Yeah.
do that.
We had another question here. So the question was, for the Bionic lens, how does it adjust the focus for the eye for near and far distance and for different imperfect vision issues?
Okay, so I'm going to use a very crude analogy of a camera that has autofocus on it. When you point that camera at a distance object, the lens will move in and out. When you point that camera at a close-up object, that lens will move in and out. That moving in and out is the autofocus capability of a camera. Our eye actually works the same way because the film in the eye is really the retina, the cornea, and the lens, which is in the middle part of the eye, is just the lens component of the camera. And as we look in the distance, intermediate, and near, it automatically does that focusing for us. I call it automatically because I don't want to clinically explain biokinetics to anyone.
Perfect. We had another one here. This is a really good one. I like this. Do you have a patient, or well, it's actually going to be patients for the first in human trial? And if not, are the people in the chat capable of participating?
Okay, so let me see if I can help everyone on the chat understand how clinical studies are done. We as a company do not have the ability to say that John or Susie or Jane or Bill should be a part of a study. What happens is if your doctor in your local area is part of the study team, they will send out a message saying that we are looking for patients to participate in a study. If you would like to participate, please go to this website or call our office or sign up here. And then once you go through that, those patients that have signed up will go through, we call it an eligibility process, where they get screened. They get really a free eye exam, because we have to be very thorough to make sure that the patient is healthy enough to go through the trial. And then they will be added to the roster of the trial. The company has really no say in doing that. We just support the local doctor who is part of the trial. In this particular case, first in human is going to be done in the Dominican of Republic. So I don't know if the audience 100% is coming from the Dominican of Republic, but I doubt it. And so that's where the first site will be. When we go into the multi-center clinical trial, we'll be around the globe. A couple places in the US, a couple places in Canada, South America, Asia. There are 8 major markets in Europe. And I do believe we'll be somewhere in the Middle East.
There's another question here. How would you articulate the likely benefits of the Ocumetic lens over existing ICLs like Visin? In other words, what are the biggest reasons to wait for the Ocumetics lens to hit the market before ditching my glasses? And the follow-up to that was, which aspects of the lens do you expect to alter and refine during clinical trials?
This is a question I actually love, because the ICLs operate in a different part of the eye. So you can get an ICL today, you'll still need a cataract lens as you get older, because ICLs does not fix the part of the eye that is broken. So what an ICL does is very similar to what lasers do. It gives you a better optical outcome. And ICLs are typically put in a patient's eye before they get to 45. If a doctor chooses to do something over 45, it's because the patient is really insistent on, they just want to see better. The part of the eye that is broken, which is the crystalline lens, will still be broken over time. So you can get an as I mentioned, you can get an ICL today, which will help you with your vision. You'll see extremely well, but you'll still be going back to your doctor to get a cataract procedure at a later point in time. 2 entirely different technologies.
All right, we've got several other questions here. I've taken out my retainer, so I should be able to speak a little bit better. So I do apologize if there's a little bit of mumbling prior. But we have another question here. Will LASIK be needed before implementation?
If you are over 45, I would highly encourage you not to waste your money on LASIK, because you're not going to get the benefit out of it. LASIK is a young person's kind of treatment. And I know a lot about LASIK because I started Alcon's refractive practice. If you go look at my bio, I actually delivered to the world the very first custom treatment that they're using today. I delivered topography guided LASIK. So this is a subject that I know a lot about. And if you are 45 years or older, please save your money, because you will enjoy LASIK for only a short period of time.
We've got another question here. How does somebody get involved in the trials that occur in the United States?
In the US?
Yeah.
Okay. Once again, we have not showcased the names of the clinics that will be involved in our multi-center clinical trial. We can't do that before we get FDA clearance to move forward. So the process to get FDA clearance is you have to do your biocompatibility studies, which we checked that off. We did real well in that. We're now going into first in human, which is basically a performance standard. And so we'll get the Dominican of Republic's approval to actually do surgery. But once we do those surgeries, we have to take those clinical reports and give them to the FDA, along with some other applications to do the treatment in the US. And at that point in time, we'll release the name of the clinics inside the US and around the world that will be involved in a multi-center clinical trial. And if you want to get involved in the trial, you can proactively actually contact those clinics and say, hey, you know, I heard you're doing it. You'll be involved in a trial. I'd like to be considered if you go forward. And they'll take all your information, and when the time is right, they will invite you in to go through the assessment. So that's typically how it's done. And that's actually typically how it's done for any kind of trial, with the exception of pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals is a little different animal to deal with, but for surgical trials, that's typically the process.
We have another question. I think we'll maybe be a little vague on this one, just for the purpose of keeping our secret sauce secret. But the question is, can you describe the purpose of the black upper ring of the Ocumetic lens, and will this inhibit the peripheral vision?
Yeah. So the black ring, we call that the annulus and the haptics. And what that black area does is it holds the Ocumetics lens in place. So once we put it into the eye, it literally holds it into place. And when your pupil comes down, the pupil and the iris is the color part of the eye. The pupil is the black hole in the center. Once all of that resolves and it comes down, you don't even see the optic in the eye unless you have a very discrete light shined in the eye that shows you the little optical shimmer that happens when you have these lenses in the eye. Other than that, you won't even notice the person that has it in their eye. So the annulus, that black area, holds that lens in place. Dayton, these are all really good questions. I'm enjoying this. Dayton, are you still there? You are muted.
Thank you. My apologies. I was talking, and sorry about that. I thought that you could hear me. My bad. So there's another question here about the lens and its abilities. I think that, of course, we'll be very careful with respect to the FDA guidelines and what we can and can't say. But this question is, the lens can be used apparently to restore vision, but does it have the ability or the possible purpose of improving vision and tackling that market?
So that is the one thing that no manufacturer will be able to say, because that is a clinical standard that gets approved through the FDA. So we call it bigger, better, best. To be able to say you're going to get the absolute best or better or more than type vision with any technology, you actually have to study that in your FDA clinical trial. So one of the performance standards that we will be looking at is how much better does the patient see beyond 20/20? 20/20 is the gold standard. And if you go and look at clinical textbooks, 20/20 basically says that you have pretty perfect vision, unless you've got some optical aberrations going on. We want to be able to say that patients will see better than 20/20, but you can only say that once you do a clinical, because we have to compare it against the gold standard.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, we a lot of those things will be discovered as we do the testing. Obviously, it would be a wonderful thing to be able to improve the vision with a lens. I don't think we're making that claim or anything, but that would be a great thing to try and aim for a lot of companies in our space. I think that's
I
probably.
want to, yeah, I want to go on record saying that we are not going to make a claim on today's webinar that we are going to improve vision. We will do the absolute best to make sure that patients see extremely well. And if the data proves out that we are improving vision, that will be an FDA approved claim that we will share and promote with this technology.
There's a question here. There's one question. I think I'll leave this one till the end. It's with regard to share price. But there's another one I think would be better to handle right now. How fast is the lens? And I think the person is asking in seconds compared to the human eye. And I'm assuming that's with respect to accommodation.
Yeah, so I don't know how many milliseconds it takes the eye to go from a accommodative to disaccommodative or non-accommodative state. So it's a high energy to low energy state. I don't know what the milliseconds are with that. The lens that we have designed will go from a high energy to low energy or accommodative, disaccommodative to accommodative state in less than a second. So it's really, really, really fast. And that's what we have measured on the bench. We will actually do those measurements in our clinical study. And as I mentioned in the early part of the presentation, we consider that a safety issue.
There's another really, really good question. I like this one. This one is from Ken. What is the likelihood of patent infringement lawsuits preventing the lens from going to market?
Well, as I mentioned with the patent slide, we have 49 global patents. Of the 49 global patents, 3 are provisional patents. So, Ken, I don't know if you understand product versus provisional, but I'll try to net it out simply. A provisional patent is a process patent. It basically says that if I'm riding a bike, every way that you ride a bike, I own the rights to that. So it's not the type of bike or the color of the bike or how many wheels it has. If you ride a bike, period, a provisional patent says I own that. So with the Ocumetics technology, we have 3 provisional patents. The way we describe, it's called biokinetics, how the eye works and how that lens operates within the eye, we actually own that as part of our IP. So anybody who comes in with, hey, I've got a custom lens design that does X, they really have to go look at our patent to make sure that they are not in infringement of it. And there's 3 provisional of the 49, there's 3 provisional patents. So chances are they're going to be in violation of one of our patents. And then we have to negotiate whether or not we think it's for the better of the industry to allow them to access it or at least go forward with their technology, or they'll have to go redesign around it. And our patents are registered with the World Patent Office. So it's not just a local jurisdiction like the patent office in Russia. It's with the World Patent Authority. So it has a little bit more bite than just showing teeth. You violate that, you get in a lot of trouble. So we're pretty buttoned up with patents. In fact, Dr. Webb is thinking of other patents for other things that he wants to do. And I mentioned earlier, we have more than just one design. This just happens to be the first design. It's version 10.8 or whatever number we're at. We just keep iterating, leading into first in human. And it's pretty exciting. Like I said, we're undervalued in the stock, but this technology is pretty exciting.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, from a asset perspective, I mean, just those patents alone on their own, I think that that's got value, even if hypothetically it was never to be commercialized. There's still some huge value there. Not that that's what would occur, but just from a standpoint of asset valuation, there's value just in the patents themselves. In fact, at least from my perspective as a director, quite a bit.
Yep.
Another question here. This one's from Ron. Will a UV filter be added to a later version of the lens?
Absolutely. Ron, good question. We won't come to market without UV protection. In fact, we'll have two versions of it. So we'll have a UV version and a non-UV version. So we are looking at the types of chromophores that we can design into the commercially available lens. So we will have both UV and non-UV versions of the lens. Absolutely.
This one's a bit of a longer question. I'm going to try and synthesize it down. So it's with respect to somebody that's it's from Alex, and it's with regard to someone that's already had cataract surgery in both eyes.
Yep.
And then I guess the question is more so to do with the fact, can this individual get the Ocumetics lens put into their eyes because they struggle with nighttime driving? And I think you can answer that.
Yeah. So the true answer is it depends. And it depends on several factors. Number one is how long has it been since you've had cataract surgery? So the age of the lens that's in your eye. What happens with ocular surgery is we grow these tissues. I'll call it a scar tissue, but it's a clear kind of scar tissue across the surface of the lens or around the edge of the lens. And the challenge with that is if you want to do a lens exchange, and this is not a clear lens exchange. This is, I've had cataract surgery and now I want to put a new lens in the eye. You have to dissect that stuff out. And that is really one-time consuming. And you got to be very careful because mistakes with dissecting that out causes all kinds of other issues that doctor may have to deal with. So the reason I say the answer depends is it depends on the age of the surgery and the lens. It depends on the skill of the surgeon. It depends on the philosophy of that surgeon's clinic, whether or not they enjoy doing that type of surgery. And so that is a good discussion that someone may want to have when this lens is available with their doctor to see, hey, I'd like to get one or both of those technologies put in my eye. Is that something you would be willing to do? And they just have that discussion because there's a lot of variability there and there's a lot of complexity associated with taking out a lens that's been in the eye for long. It's not impossible. I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm just saying that you really have to have that discussion with your doctor.
There's a question here from Keith. I'll try and synthesize it to be a little bit shorter. Can you give a timeline for the first in human studies and what that will look like?
Yeah. So first in human has a lot of activities. Starts at the end of this month. And it's all of those activity bullets that I showed on the slides that were color coded. So red, yellow, and green. We have to do every one of those things, not necessarily in the order that I had them on the slide, but it's not like you can do a shotgun approach and get them all done at the same time. So we are working through all of that. And it starts with the manufacturing of the lenses. We're taking the lenses that we've manufactured, putting them in the final format. We have to package those and we have to send it out to the sterilizer. I mean, it's a big deal to get to this particular point in time, and there's so many things that we have to do, and we have to do it right. We have to make sure that the analytic technology for the patients is there. So if the doctor doesn't have it, we have to ship it over. We have to calibrate and make sure that the staff is properly trained. We have to do the recruiting for the patients. We happen to have chosen the largest clinic in the DR. So, and the doctor is one of the best surgeons. He was a US-based surgeon that from Bascom Palmer that actually moved over to the island. He's been there for quite some time and he's world renowned. So the surgeon is just incredible. And so we're in good shape there, but there's a lot of activity that has to take place, and that will start at the end of this month.
So the next question that we have here, what is the deterioration rate of the lenses, and will they need to be replaced at some point in the patient's life? If yes, what are the cost of, well, what's the cost of replacements versus initial installation?
Yeah, did you say deterioration?
Yeah, deterioration of, I think the lenses themselves.
Yeah, so silicone material, which is what we made our lens out of. In fact, I'll even go back a little further. Acrylic and silicone materials uh, uh, don't have a half-life or shelf life in terms of breaking down and dissolving. This technology has been around forever and it's been used in so many things. So it's not like we've got a half-life where we put it in and in 3 years you got to have it replaced, tuned up, changed out, etc. Typically, when you have cataract surgery, you will have cataract surgery one time. So that technology will last you a lifetime. And it doesn't matter if it's acrylic or silicone, the technology is designed to last you a lifetime.
Um, Perfect. Sorry. Just 2 seconds here. Okay, here we go. So I had from Paul here. I have glaucoma and had understood the Ocumetics lens may have positive benefits or may negate or help with glaucoma. Is this true? Also, I'm nearsighted and had LASIK years ago, but now I'm wearing glasses again. Will the surgery be an issue for me?
So I'll deal with the back part of that before I will with the front part. So just because you had LASIK, it doesn't exclude you from being a potential candidate for this lens. The thing that I'm more concerned with is the fact that you have glaucoma. And because we don't know if it's closed angle or open angle, you would have to really have your glaucoma under control before you have any of these premium IOLs put in. If your numbers are not controlled, what will happen is you will go down a cascading pathway of having more glaucoma type interventions, including surgery, to get your pressure numbers under control. And if you had a premium lens in your eye, you wouldn't see well because your eye is constantly changing and pretty much under assault. So I wouldn't say it excludes the patient. What I will say is you need to sit down and look at treatment intervals and interventions for your eye with your doctor before you even want to put this in your eye. If you have a disease state, you got to get the disease under control first before you could even look at the ocular issues.
Um, I keep getting this question, so I'm actually gonna ask this. We're not gonna answer it, of course, but just so that I'll let you take it, Dean. But what would the price of the lens be, and how much train? Well, actually, this part would be good. And how much training do the doctors need in order to do the procedure?
Okay, so the training is minimal. They would have to be trained on the technology and patient expectations, and certainly how to resolve any kind of unexplained outcome. So that's just kind of normal stuff. So, and that's for the doctor. Patient pricing, we can't say what the price is because it's an unapproved product in the US and around the world, and you can't talk about pricing around the world. What I can do is basically say, and you can do this on Google, you can go out and look at the current premium category of IOLs and type that in. So intraocular lenses, premium category, not a standard monofocal, but something like a multifocal IOL for presbyopia. And you'll find out what the pricing range might look like. And we'll probably, all companies will probably be somewhere price parity in those areas. But we cannot talk about pricing right now.
Okay, we have another one here from Ibram. Hello, what about the potential space when implanting the lens and the risk of retinal detachment after lens replacement?
So if you are a high myope, retinal detachments are high anyway. It doesn't matter what surgery you're having. But if you're moderate to low myope, and that's really depending on the distance of the retina to the capsular bag, you should do just fine, unless you've got a disease process that you're also managing through. So retina detachment is one of those nasty things that are associated with cataract surgery. The surgery's gotten so much better that to have a retinal detachment is rare, but it does occur. And we have to mitigate against that if it does happen. So if you are a high myope with a very long axial length, which is the length of the eye back to front, chances of a retinal detachment are pretty high versus someone that has a normal or shorter range axial length. And that's something your doctor will work out. It doesn't matter what the technology is. The technology doesn't dictate retinal tears. It's technique and it's the condition of the eye.
So here's a question. This one says the individual has low vision due to age. I think the individual is 49 or 50, and they're in the US. Does it matter? And would they need to travel, or could they travel to get the lens preemptively before it's approved in the US? Yeah, just with regard to that.
Well, let's deal with low vision for a second. Low vision is typically a retina issue. It's not a cataract IOL issue. So if your low vision is retina related, it doesn't matter what technology you put in the eye, the patient's going to still have low vision visual issues. So this technology is agnostic um, to what's going on in the eye. So put the technology aside, you got to look at the condition of the eye. So the person who actually asked the question, I don't know if they have been working with low vision clinics or a doctor who specializes in low vision patients, but that's where I would absolutely start. And as they get older, then you can really figure out what technologies are going to work best for you, given the low vision consideration. So don't look at the technology first, look at the condition first.
So here's another question. Will this work with astigmatism?
Yes. That was the easiest question you gave me, Dayton. Thank you. That was a softball.
I got to throw a few of those in there. Here's another one from Jeremy. Which aspects of the lens do you expect to alter and or refine during the clinical trials?
So during the clinical trials, there are there are a lot of things that we'll be looking at, but two things in particular. One is we want to be able to make sure the patient can resolve with their distance vision. We want them to be able to see extremely well in the distance. So it's a performance standard that we want to make sure that we can hit. Where you make the changes and mitigations to performance is through your calculations. So we'll look at how to do a proper IOL calculation to get that performance standard where it needs to be. The other thing is your curves. So how much accommodative amplitude can that patient get? The standard that we are putting in the eye is 3.3¼ diopters of accommodative amplitude. We haven't gone higher. This lens was actually designed to be a 14 diopter accommodative lens. The reason we pulled it back is we don't know how the body will react or the eye will react to 14 diopters. And so it was an ethical reason why we ended up with 3¼ versus a design issue. We designed it for 14, but we cut it back to deliver 3¼ When we come out of the multi-center clinical trial, we'll make some determinations as to whether or not, actually, we'll probably see this in first-in-human as well. We'll make a determination as to whether or not the eye can resolve through more than 3¼ diopters worth of accommodation. And so we'll spend some time back on the bench designing and shaping the lens. So it's all about how we generate the lens, the optical lens from our molds. We can change the base curves on those molds and make the lens pretty much do whatever we need it to do. But we need to understand clinically how that lens performs in the eye before we make those changes.
This is another question here. I'm not sure what this condition is, but it says I have keratoconus. So it's some sort of an eye condition. Can this work for me?
Yeah, keratoconus.
Yep.
Okay, so what's the question?
Can they use the lens?
Can they use the lens?
Or, yeah, is it going to be able to be possible for them to have the lens?
If they have what we refer to as progressive keratoconus, the short answer is no, because we have to address the keratoconus. So this is a problem with the surface of the eye, so the cornea. And the cornea bulges forward. It's not smooth. It bulges forward like this. And that bulge, we have to take care of that. So if you're a young patient, chances are it's just going to continue to bulge and thin. And if you don't do anything about it, then you'll have to go through a corneal transplant. And that's a long road back to good vision. There are other treatments that are available out there for keratoconus. Cross-linking is probably the most popular and the #1 that's available. And it doesn't matter which way you do it, epi on, epi off, it doesn't matter. Cross-linking is the one that's available out there. So you should have your doctor or look in your region to find a doctor that's doing cross-linking for keratoconus. Once you get the keratoconus where it needs to be, so the bulging has stopped, the cornea is locked and it's strong, then you can start looking at can I have LASIK, or can I have an ICL, or can I actually put one of these high performance lenses in my eye? But you got to get the disease process right first.
So we got one from Gary. If something goes wrong during insertion, will this be detrimental to sight or to the person's sight after the fact?
Well, people don't go blind from cataract surgery because it's such an easy, I shouldn't call it easy. Um, my doctor friends would get mad at me if I refer to it as easy. It's such a common approach, and the outcomes are just incredibly good that um, if something goes bad, so the worst thing that could actually go bad with a cataract surgery is uh, we have a vitreous break or tear. That's the worst of the worst. And even resolving that doesn't preclude the fact that you can get a good IOL put in your eye and you'll see extremely well. But in terms of just complications, that's the biggest complication. So uh, 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 being detrimental to sight is pretty strong. I would say that if you have something go wrong, we have to resolve what that issue was. And the biggest of the biggest is a vitreous break. And either the doctor, if he's outside the U.S., can do a vitrectomy and fix that, or if he's inside the U.S., and I think Canada is set up very similar to the U.S., that patient would have to be referred out to a specialist, a retina specialist, to take care of it.
All right. Here's one's from George. Is there a difference in focus speed between our air technology as opposed to the silicone oil? And is one of the two faster?
So I don't know the answer to that question. What I will say to the caller is that we are not going to do a horse race on which is better, theirs or mine. As long as they both resolve vision uh, the right way, they're both probably going to be pretty good. I don't know the speed of theirs. What I am tracking is the speed of mine. And in my design statements, I have been very clear with our design team that we want to have a lens that resolves itself in less than a second.
All right. We got one from Daniel. How long after initial testing can somebody go to another country to get them? And I'm assuming that in this instance, this would be the DR is where we'd be looking at somebody getting them before approval.
Okay, so say that last part again. How long before what again?
How long after the initial testing? And I'm assuming that they didn't stipulate which testing, but I'm assuming that they're assuming first in human, but you can take liberty with that. So how long after testing can one go and get the procedure in another country?
Okay, I'm going to answer that with a process. So once we finish up first in humans, 10 patients, we have certain intervals that we have to give back to basically FDA through our clinical report. So we have to look at 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, and give all of that data back to the FDA so they can give us approval to move forward with our multi-center clinical trial. So once all of that has been taken into consideration, we can actually petition back to the DR and say, hey, we did our first in human studies here. We would like to get approval for CE marking, early commercialization, or ISO approval to sell this lens in your country. And then it will be up on the DR to evaluate that application and give us approval. Typically, that is a 6-month process. So it would be 6 months even after we have the last clinical report to give to the FDA. So let's just say that whole process takes a year. If that occurs, whomever is asking the question, if they want to go to the DR and see if they can do some medical tourism while they're there, or surgical tourism, which means they go on vacation and they have a procedure done, I don't see why they couldn't do it. I couldn't guarantee that the DR would allow that to happen, but crazier things have happened.
Okay. So this one's from Colby. How do we or how do we receive notification of non-public share? So buy option. I'm assuming that they're referencing, private placements and things like that.
Yeah, you want to answer that, Dayton?
Yeah, sure. So Colby, the best way that you can keep an eye on that is there will be news releases that are announced, and in particular, it'll be made available on our website. I believe that we will also send out emails for that as well. Typically, the way that we structure financings is it depends on the market, depends on a lot of different factors, and in particular, our more recent financings have been geared more towards larger investors, but we're not against having a large number of smaller investors. So it depends on a few things. First and foremost, if you're looking at making an investment that's a little bit larger, then definitely reach out to us. You can reach out to me in particular, dayton.marks@ocumetics.com, or Dean. And if if you want to do a bit of a smaller investment under 25,000, then the open market's a great place to to do that. You can, if you're Canadian, you can do that through your TFSA. I don't know if you can do that through your Roth in the US. You'll have to talk to an investment advisor. But for the actual private placements and things like that do come up from time to time, just keep an eye on our website, and then emails and information will be sent out. It should be easy to be made aware of that, and that's the best way to keep an eye out for that.
Yep. Okay, Dayton, let's take a couple more and then we'll wrap up, okay?
Perfect. Okay. I'll try and pick out some good ones here that I think really synthesize what people want to know. In particular, it was mentioned that Ocumetics may have up to 40% of the IOL market. How does this account when compared to the other 5 competitors using silicone oil within their lenses?
So as I started that part of the discussion, I mentioned that there are a lot of different ways you can actually analyze the market. So we believe that we are going to be a larger share of the market due to the uniqueness of our technology. So the accommodative range is higher, the disaccommodative range is faster. The way it actually works in the eye with the biomechanics of the eye is totally different. The fact that we are a non-oil technology really puts us in a great place because of the toxicity associated with oils. You'll notice that I took a conservative approach because I could have said we were going to have 70% of the market, which I think is very unrealistic given we've got probably 5 other good competitors, but I don't think they're going to occupy the same footprint and space that we are going to occupy given the uniqueness of our technology. So to sum it up, our unique proposition is going to position us extremely well to have a 40% share, and that number is actually very conservative. It could be higher, and we want it to be higher. The other thing is, if you looked at the left side of that chart, the premium space, which is what I was speaking of, is only 29%, of all the IOLs that are put in the eye. There's a 70% grouping of monofocal IOLs that even if the market doesn't grow, we think that we can actually push penetration into that area, and we'll do that through the unique propositions of our technology, but also we'll do that through pricing, because I think that we can create a environment where everyone who qualifies can get this technology. And once we get the word out of what first in human looks like, and then what we're doing in a multi-center clinical trial in terms of areas, people are going to say, hey, choose me because I want to be a part of that. One other thing that I didn't talk about was the unique nature of our clinical advisors. We have 14 of the top advisors. These are world-renowned advisors that are part of our team, advising us on what type of technology we should have in our lenses. And they are represented through 8 of the largest research institutions around the world. So we are blessed and fortunate to be in a position that we're in with a very unique, novel technology, and to have an advisory group of individuals that are literally the best in the world. And so I could not be happier where we are. So the other thing is the herd effect. Because our advisors are associated with this technology, those that are interested, and I'm talking surgeons right now, will say, hey, if that doctor is involved in this, it's got to be a good thing, and I want to be involved in that. And then the last thing is we have not talked about doing direct to consumer type commercialization activities, because we can't do that with an unapproved product. But those are some activities we'll be looking at as well. You know, how do we get the community, patients, people involved in this and looking at this? So we'll do that through some things that can help move the market as well. Dayton, I'll take one more.
Yeah, so the last question, this is the one that I stated that we'd probably keep till last. We had one investor talk about what is the upper threshold value, or what kind of share prices could, Ocumetics go to. I want to be very, 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 very careful with that one, because, we don't want to, make a statement about share price or anything like that. But what I think we could do is just talk about a few factors that could, shareholders could use to kind of come up with that number themselves. In particular, the size of the market, the growth rate of the industry and the penetration, and also the growth rate of premium lenses. So, for example, at least from, what I've always looked at is Alcon's like a $40 billion company, and they have their percentage of market share. But I'll let you maybe answer that, Dean.
Well, so it is not inconceivable to say that the stock is, the sky's the limit. This technology is really good, and we are not the only players here. The company that I spent 28 years of my life with has a lens in this space. So Alcon has a lens in this space, and if they see, and they're the largest ophthalmic company in the world, if they see value in the space, so much so that they put a lens in there, then we know that the category is going to grow, and we want to grow at a faster rate than the category itself. Right now, if you just go out and look, it's undervalued. But I can tell you, once we go into the funnel for first in human, which will be there in a couple weeks here, the stock should start moving. And now's the time to get involved, whether it's private placement or over the counter. Now's the time to get involved if you want to get involved in this type of technology. The other thing that I will say, and I was on the phone with an investor yesterday, a lot of times you get involved in these investments because you think it's really going to pop, and these companies don't make it even halfway around the track. Well, we're halfway around the track, and we're coming around, the third turn into home, because we've made it to first in human. And that is a really big deal in this space for any kind of product, whether it's pharmaceutical or device. to be able to say we are actually going to put our technology or use our technology on a human. That's a really big deal. So this is not just kicking the tires and creating prototypes. We've got a product that we're actually going to put into a patient or a group of patients. And we're pretty excited about that. So I would say that the stock is going to head in a northern type direction. I can't say what that number is. I could surmise, but then I would be wrong because it would be my own number, and I don't want to put the company at risk for me spouting out things that I'm not really sure are going to come to pass. But I will tell you, this technology is very good, and the stock should be moving in an upwardly direction as a result of the announcements that we're making, the progress that we're making, and where we're going for first in human. And now I'm starting to look forward to the multi-center clinical trial. So Dayton, with that, I think we'll close it out.
Absolutely. It looks good. And for anybody else that has questions, you can email myself or Dean. Our emails are on the website. We thank everybody for attending and yeah.
All right. Really enjoyed it, everyone. Look forward to the next one so I can give you some more updates. Take care. Bye-bye now.